Welcome in, everybody. Come on in. We are getting ready for another great edition of the Global Leaders Roundtable Fireside Chat Edition. I'm super excited for what we are getting ready to discuss on today, and you're going to be pretty excited too. So you want to stick around for what we have. This is going to be another leadership shifting edition of the Global Leaders Roundtable. I am your host, Kenyon R. Dudley, keynote speaker, strategist, global strategist, and founder of this growing and great global platform where we are spotlighting voices who are shaping the future of leadership. They're shaping culture and they are shaping kingdom driven excellence. Listen, for those of you who are just getting an opportunity to meet me for the first time, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this show and chiming in on the discussions that we're having. Welcome in. I want you to feel at home while you're sitting around the proverbial virtual round table. And for those of you who are just getting to know me, you may not know a lot about me. So I'll share a little bit about my mission just for a moment. It is rooted in one simple purpose, one simple truth. And that is my mission is to say something that transforms someone's life, transform their thinking, and points them back to God. Why? Because in God, you can find your fullness of joy, your purpose, and all the things that God has promised you for this life. And this platform exists to host conversations that matter most, conversations that pierce through the noise, shift leaders into their purpose, and help them build something eternal through practical wisdom and prophetic wisdom as well. So if you are watching right now live from our YouTube channel, TGLR Network, thank you so much for being a part of the ecosystem over there. Go ahead and like this broadcast. Tag another leader or another friend that's a part of your circle. Let them know that you are a part of this great content and you want them to be a part of it as well. And then subscribe to the channel right over there at TGLR Network. We are bringing you insight that equips and that activates. Listen, I've got a few announcements, but we'll go over some of those toward the latter part of the show. I want to get right into our conversation on today. We have, I believe, what is one of our brilliant minds of this time. God is really, we were talking before we went live, and just listening at him speak. I already know that God has favored him, that God has placed his hand on him, and the wisdom that comes from his mouth is just powerful. So today's guest is someone that I am growing to admire just listening to him for his commitment to intentional leadership, culture shaping, and growth centered thinking. Jim Carbaugh is a leadership developer, educator, and strategist who helps leaders bridge the gap between intention and implementation. He's here to walk us through the relationship between climate and culture and how strong habits build sustainable influence. Let us welcome my new friend, Jim. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, and thank you very much.
I want to make sure. Now, did I get? I tried my best. Did I get the last name right? Did I get? I
Hey,
tried.
you did okay. You did
Okay,
okay. I'm used to that. It's not. It is Carbaugh, just like Harbaugh.
Carball. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. I'm one letter away from being the head coach of an NFL football team, I guess.
There we go. I'm going to commit it to memory. I said to myself, I am going to get this.
That's all right. That's all right. It's funny. When I was in college, that's what everybody they Carbo and Carbon, and I used to have kids spell it that way. So that's fine. It's what it is.
Yes.
Just a note there before you even go. Jim Harbaugh and Jim Carbaugh both graduated college in 1985. So, you know, yeah, I think we're the same age. The whole thing.
Okay. Okay.
Someday
Well,
I'll
there's
meet him.
something
Someday
there.
I will meet Jim, and that'll be all right.
That'll be the connection there, right? Okay, Jim, I love your spirit, man. You had an opportunity, you and we had an opportunity to talk briefly before we went live, and just listening to you, I'm serious. Just listening to you, I could tell that you're full of wisdom, you're full of experience, you're full of leadership experience. Why don't you, before we jump over into the conversation and the chat, why don't you officially introduce yourself to the viewers? What part of the world are you in right now? And what does God have you working on right now?
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm located in South Central Pennsylvania. I was born and raised here. I did go to college out in Nebraska, traveled around a little bit, um, and I am basically like you. I'm a keynote speaker. Consider myself a guide
Okay.
and also an educator. Of course, I was an educator for 35 years. I was a teacher for 18 and an administrator for 15, and I was a head football coach, head track coach.
Wow.
And what I'm working on right now is I co-published a book about a year ago with a fellow called The Cracking the Rich Code. And well, I just had a chapter. And then I just finished up probably about 4 months ago a graphic novel. And because I want to reach the youth.
Yeah.
And although it's, as I said today in a gathering, just because it's a graphic novel doesn't mean you can't read it as an adult, because we all know we're secretly reading Batman somewhere in the closet, right?
Right.
But it's the story of what was the core of what I used in the classroom and what I used to build culture in the classroom, and later as an administrator build the culture in schools.
Okay.
And I got it from my grandfather. So the whole story, it's called The Shop Secret: Learn What Pat Knew. It's an everlasting lasting gift. When you think about it, it's one of those things that I think as a leader we need to strive for. We need to add value
Hmm.
to people. That, there's a quote, and I'm trying to remember who said it, so I won't take credit. It's not Jim Carbaugh's, but it's: success is about you personally. Significance is about others.
Mm.
So when you want to be significant, you want to add value.
Right.
And significance also is how you build a legacy, because people will be successful and they come and go. The legacy continues on. And I think that's one of those things, both as an educator and a coach, I wanted to try to strive. You want to give a little bit, you want to support people, you want to support. So when I left education, I wanted to mentor new leaders coming into whatever field,
Right.
because that's one of the biggest complaints in leadership is we don't have a real good onboarding, and we don't have leadership growth. We don't, we just kind of have that find it out. And,
Yeah.
why we still have that in 2025 is beyond me.
Yeah.
And I do believe it was John Maxwell who several years ago said that he asked him what you thought the biggest crisis was. And he said, there's a lack of good leaders.
Mm. I would have to agree. A lot. You and I synergize on the work that we do, especially with leaders. Um, and I would have to agree that there's a shortage of good leaders, and I would even push further and say there's a shortage of healthy whole leaders, right? Leaders who are doing the work, behind the scenes to make sure that they show up in a significant way, right? To the point where they have the capacity to be able to consider others and touch their lives in the necessary way that they must. Talk to me, because you have an extensive background, like you said, in education and leadership already. I mean, you've led classrooms to schools. I mean, all types of things. Talk to me about how did you find uh, out what type of leader you were, and how did you work on that? How did you craft your leadership throughout the years, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. That really goes back to the whole story is when I started teaching, everyone kind of ground into you. And here's the great part about education. Everybody went through it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
everybody's experienced it. So you can think of teachers that you embraced, teachers that you felt were fair, teachers you didn't think were fair. But
Hmm.
one of the things coming right into education that got ground into me is you better have all these expectations, you better have all this stuff, you better have rules. And And it was one of those things that didn't sit well with me,
Mm-hmm.
because what I was, am I after connection or compliance?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And you're not going to learn if you don't have a connection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to learn. I've took college courses where I didn't connect with the professor. He was very matter of fact. You go up and ask questions. They didn't seem intrigued. They didn't care. Read chapter again, do whatever, and you lost that.
Mm.
It was all about compliance. So early into my career, I realized that while those things are important, you don't all this stuff, but why am I getting hung up in class of a kid wanting to go sharpen his pencil?
Yeah.
If I can, now here's the key. Can I teach them just as no different than if we were at a round table in a meeting
Mm-hmm.
of, 7, 8 people, and I needed to go sharpen my pencil, or I need to go get in there, whatever. I'm going to do it in a very, respectful manner.
Right.
So those are the things. So that kind of cord all around, and that's how I created that. I kind of said, you know what? I used to tell the kids, I've got a job. My job is to educate you, to teach you, to do all those things. The custodian's going to clean the floors.
Mm-hmm.
The cafeteria ladies make you the stuff. But your job is to learn.
Yes.
But then I had to define what that was for them, right?
Yes.
What does it mean what is it to learn? I could tell you to learn, but that we wrap that up and says, well, that means you got to gain knowledge. And I've really come to realize that knowledge doesn't equate to wisdom.
Right. Exactly.
Until we take our knowledge and we can craft it into wisdom, which creates creativity and all that. And guess where the wisdom comes from? Past
Mm-hmm.
experiences,
Mm-hmm.
because information's information, and we're stuck in that today, right? I mean, we can just look up information. We can go to trivia night and we can be the champ.
Right. For sure.
Doesn't mean we're wise. Can you solve a problem? Can you take all that stuff you have and solve a problem? And I was lucky. I taught science, so that kind of flows right into it really well. When kids couldn't believe that they could get an A in my class and still not get the lab right. Well, if
Yeah.
you can explain to me why it didn't come out right, you've proved to me your wisdom and that you learned the concept. Not
Mm-hmm.
about it's not about what's the right answer. It's about how did we get to where we are and why isn't it the right answer?
Yeah.
So
I
that's how
think.
I kind of crafted that, and then as you know, as we kind of discussed off, is that's what my graphic novel's about. But that all fell into place because it fell into I have what I call my learn framework,
Mm-hmm.
and so I established in my classrooms, I
Yeah.
established in my schools and all my teams the learn framework, which is listen, ethics, attitude, respect, and know. And then we define all those and what are they. And if you do all 5 of those things, we're going to be fine.
I was just going to go to this concept that you have called learn, and so I'm so glad that you're going in that direction, because I think so many people are frustrated in 2025, and will continue to be, Jim, because of that very paradox, that very issue. They learn or they memorize, right, the right answer, or what they think is the right answer that will get them to the next level in life, or the next thing, or that will make them successful, right?
Right.
But they don't really grasp the concepts, right? And so you're saying that there's a whole method a framework that you teach that helps people really learn and grasp the concept, um, of the concepts of life, in order to be able to walk in wisdom in every area of their life. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the things that really realized, and we didn't mention that. I actually, in August 2 years ago, gave a TEDx talk on that.
Nice.
And
Okay.
yeah, I gave a TEDx talk on that, and basically, one of my lines in there is what I found out is this went from the walls in my classroom to the halls, because people started saying, "What's going on in there?" And
Hmm.
then it's gone beyond where when I stepped away from the educational career and got into coaching and got into mentoring. Ironically, there were some business leaders saying, "Hey, what is how do you do this?" And that's why I'd say, well, it's all about learn. And so I have some companies that actually, when they do their meetings, they're a learn team. So
Right.
they've established what learn is, and they realize they're going to fall within that framework to establish and conduct their meetings. And it's one of those things that's it's simple, And I think it's you said it's what people are looking for. It's not. I'm not teaching morals and ethics. So it's never any of those things to anybody. It's not. I'm not stepping on anyone's toes because you're able to define your own.
Right.
But it's a framework that says if you follow this, and I even established with some of my middle school kids a journal where we'd say, let's journal, right? Let's write down every day. What did we hear today? What did we listen to? What were the ethics that what were the values that were important to us today? What was our attitude? Big smiley face, not a smiley face. What was it? You know, did we respect anybody? Did I disrespect anybody? And did I get any no's? And if I got to know, why did I get to know? That's the biggest thing. Why did I get to know? You got to find out why you got to know, because it doesn't mean it's over. It just means you can't do it right now, or maybe something's not right. Maybe you're not ready. So yeah, it is a framework. I obviously truly believe in it. I mean, I got 35 years experience using it both in the classroom and schools for with teams. My own personal life, you know, both of my boys would tell you that. You know,
I want to ask this question, Jim, because you kind of you sped through it just a little bit, but I want us to slow it down and really break down to our audience what learn is. So give me each word, what each letter means, and how are we to apply that in our life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'll come back, but I'll kind of give you the, you know, so what I would say is, you know, learn, it's listen. So the big thing with listen is you have to listen up before you speak up. So that's the rule. You know, and I hate rules, but that's the expectation is I'm going to listen before I speak. And how many times do we see people as they're listening, they're nodding their head, and then they just jump right in and you never get to finish your sentence, or the question never really gets answered. And then there's this massive confusion on what's going on because we didn't let someone finish, even to the point where, again, whether it's in the classroom, in the boardroom, whatever, if I'm truly listening to somebody, if I'm listening to you, I should be able to say, hey, I really like what you just said, and be able to repeat a little bit of what you just said and say, but you know what, I'd like to add this. And it no longer becomes, I just want to have the best idea in the room.
Right.
I want to, as I said earlier, I want to add value.
Yes.
I'd like to add something to that. I don't want to discredit what you shared. So the listen is make sure you listen up before you speak up. You know, our communication, if you think about it, it's about 45% listening. And then we've got hearing, writing, and reading is how we do the other parts. So my goal is for people to, let's shift that to maybe 60 to 70% listening. You know, so it's one of those things that I don't want to see you reading while I'm talking. I don't want to see you, you know, we all get that every day now, right? Everybody's got the phones in front of their face.
Exactly.
Right.
Just distracted, right?
You're not listening. And I could tell a million stories, and you probably could too, where you were talking to somebody, they had their phone, they're going back and forth. And then all of a sudden you're going, what do you think? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. You know,
just happened today.
Oh, I got to read this email. Well, then I'm not going to talk. Oh, go ahead. No, I'm not going to go ahead.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll be honest with you, part of that really clicked with me is the way I personally learned things is I realized I cannot be distracted, which I realize that a lot of people need to realize they can't. You can't listen to music and read a book at the same time.
Right.
You've got all kinds of stuff going in there. I really need to have silence around me. I need to focus on what I'm doing.
Right.
You know, I don't need the distractions because that's just the way I'm wired. I'm one of those people that's the way it is. So that's the L is listening. So listen up before you speak up. Ethics is real simple. Ethics is do the right thing, add value. But what we do with both in the classroom and in boardrooms and stuff is we say, okay, what are our non-negotiable values? Let's list them, because research has showed that you could set and list 10 things, but ultimately you probably have 5 and more likely just 3 things that are your non-negotiables. You lie to me and that's it. We're done. I'm not playing around. You know, that kind of thing. You know, trust. You know, I need to be able to trust somebody. So once you establish that in a classroom, or you establish that in the boardroom, the 3 to 5, just think of what that does. How easy that is to everyone in the room knows, well, these are what we value the most.
Right.
I'm allowed to have more than that, but we value the most. So if we say respect, or we say, trust is, well, then as a teacher or as a boss, if trust is huge, well, then why should I have any misgivings with the employees or the people I'm working with?
Exactly.
Because they should do the right thing. So when we have those conversations, that trust's important to me. So don't break the trust. So that's really a one we really dive into and really start to talk about how do we pick those values. And it's really, that's a great activity, not only with kids, but with adults in the room, where everyone writes down, and then you start putting those cards out in the middle of the room and you start to really pull it together. And it's amazing how it comes together so quickly.
I love that, because it's like writing out the vision, the true north. That's what I called it for my teams. Like, true north. What is that thing that we're all focused on, that we believe in, that is a part of the value, and it kind of synergizes the team, and it puts us all in the right direction, no matter what your job description is, or your role, or your path. Like you said, as long as we know that we're going to respect, that we're going to honor, that we're going to whatever you do within your role, as long as it points toward those standards, then we're getting somewhere. We're being
Absolutely.
effective.
Yep. Read the compass. Yeah. You got to find your compass reading. It's funny, on Twitter, I always say Monday's compass check. Like, you got to check your compass every morning.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of hiking outdoor stuff, and you just can't say, well, I'm heading that way. You got to read. I always I did orienteering with kids, and you tell kids, okay, you're going to read these things. And I'd say, okay, now everybody's got their compass, right? Everybody close your eyes, and we'd be out in the field, start walking, and you watch everybody go left. Okay, now read your compass, get yourself back on target.
Right.
It's ultimately what we do. We all drift. So you have to constantly check yourself. And that's what those values are about. We have to check ourselves. I mean, I have said it to hundreds of people, and I have no problem saying it. Every time I've made a bad decision, I've stepped outside my values.
Right.
Every time I've decided, I'm going to go ahead and do this, then when it's all gone south, or it didn't go real well, or all of a sudden I've got a couple people I've isolated, I'm going, that's not me.
Yeah.
And we all have those moments. And
that's
not me is not my values. And let's face it, that's something that I think, we all want and need. I mean, if you can think back to your classroom times, you can think into your business, we all want those things we all want them. Well, let's just put them up on the wall and start saying we're going to do them.
Yeah, for sure.
Stop pretending. Stop assuming everyone in the room is on the same page. Let's put the page up. Let's put up there what's up there. So the next thing is then attitude. And attitude kind of gets really simple with a lot of things, because I always say a good attitude, is going to get you everywhere you want to go. And a good attitude, even when things go bad, is going to make those bad things go away a lot easier. It doesn't mean that they didn't hurt or whatever, but it's going to help. But the one thing that you realize, and we all realize this, if you have a bad attitude, there is absolutely no way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
If you don't like a teacher, a professor, or the person who's talking in the boardroom, you have something against them, you don't like, whatever. You think they got the position you should have had. You're not listening to anything they're saying. You're going to learn absolutely nothing. If we all read a book we didn't like, how much of that book really stuck in? Also, we're reading chapter 2 of a book we don't like again and again.
Yeah.
We didn't like it.
Yeah.
So you got to have an attitude of like, you got to be positive. Now, it doesn't mean you don't be real.
Okay.
But you got to be positive.
How do we, putting a pin there for a moment, how do we, especially leaders, how do we tell the difference from being positive, right? Or drifting over into, not telling the truth, like just relaxing our standards and letting things just go because we're trying so hard to be positive and to remain positive. But now we've kind of slipped over into like the doormat, if you will, and just kind of allowing things to be. And that can be kind of dangerous too, right? That can kind of create a toxic culture, don't you think?
Yeah. And you know what's great about the learn thing? The learn concept is those things all intertwine. So what you just talked about is if my attitude, if I'm starting to do that drifting, that means I'm going to the next word, which is respect. I'm not respecting myself. Or guess what? I'm back up to ethics. I'm stepping outside my ethics, because if trust and honor is a major thing for me, well, then why am I doing that? So part of that attitude is Yeah, and then it goes down to no. Well, yeah, now I got to say no, but I got to be positive about it.
Right.
So as a leader, I've got to find a way to look at whoever it is and say, look, I see your passion. I see what it's all about. But right now, it's just not timing. It's just not good. I want you to hold on to that. No,
I
we
love
can't
that.
do that. And sometimes you have to do a hard no. Sometimes you're in a meeting, you just got to say, hey, Jim, no,
Yeah.
enough right now. We'll come back later. But that's drawing that hard line off of the values. And then again, coming back to the respect for the time, whatever it might be. So that's the great part about the learn is it just keeps going back and forth. It just
Yeah.
intertwines itself.
Mm-hmm.
So then we step into respect. And the biggest thing with respect, I love the golden rule, right? The golden rule is great. But here's, I learned this not only from my grandfather, but I actually had an old crusty old coach one time. And he looked at me and he said, do you think you're motivating every kid on your team? I said, yeah, man, I'm a great motivator. Now you think about this, and this is something that all leaders should think about. This is something that parents should think about, right? Because everyone's a parent and maybe they played a sport and the whole thing. Something pastors can think about. Not everybody gets motivated or inspired the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say the golden rule is hey, to treat people the way you want to be treated, guess what? You're missing a large portion of people. As a matter of fact, this old coach looked at me and said, you're missing 2/3 of your team. You need to know every team member. You need to know every person, and you need to treat them the way they want to be treated. So you got to get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Jim doesn't like being yelled at to get motivated. Maybe he just needs someone to come up and put his arm around him and say, let's go, man. You got this.
Wow.
Right? Where, again, you get that old linebacker. He wants his head slapped and, whatever.
Right.
So you think about that. Not everyone gets inspired the same way. It's no different than listening to a song. There's people who like certain songs and people who don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's some songs that just pump people up when they go into the gym or they go someplace. There's other people like, I don't get it. Well, we got to respect that. We got to treat them the way they want to be treated. It's a little bit above the golden rule. They actually call that the platinum rule. And that really turns you into connecting with almost virtually everybody.
Yeah.
But again, you got to know them. You got to get to know them. So, but that's the respect in it. But again, it all goes back to, you got to respect everything and everyone at all times. You
Mm-hmm.
have to show respect. Even if you don't know them, you need to be respectful. And then, again, that's one of those things as a group, as kids and stuff, we talk about what the key is. What does that look like?
Okay.
What does respect look like? Because sometimes people think they're giving someone a hard time and that's the way I'm respecting him. No, you're not. That's not respect.
Yeah.
So, and that has to happen in the boardroom,
all the time.
I as a principal, I had some team leaders and I had to get to know them. And I knew there was a couple team leaders that were really introverted and they had a lot of great things. So, I actually worked with a leader who used to call everyone out. Just like you think about that in school, right? You'd sit back in school, you're shy, and all of a sudden the teacher's going, hey, you haven't answered a question all day. Well, that doesn't mean I don't know. And then all of a sudden you get all stammered and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't leave you as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
We have to respect that. But you know what I would do is I would find that person at the end of the day or the very next morning. I'd walk in and say, hey, team meeting yesterday. We were talking about changing the schedule. I know you have some ideas. What were they? And they're going to share them with me. They just didn't want to share them in front of the group.
Right.
We got to respect that, not call them out. So the last thing in learn obviously is no. And the big thing there with kids, I would always say, look, you need to, no excuses. You need to own it, solve it, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Because I tell them, I don't want all these stories about why you didn't do the work. I don't want these stories about why you pushed Johnny in the locker.
Mm-hmm.
Just own it. Let's just move on. Let's solve the problem. But the other part of that is we got to realize that no gives us the opportunity to ask why.
Mm. Yeah.
Because a no is no good to us if we don't know why we got to know. Because then guess what we do? We've all done this, right? We get a no, and then we start thinking. We start making stuff up.
Oh, yes.
We start making stuff up. That first girl that ever turned you down, instead of saying, oh, okay, well, how come? Well, I don't like you. Okay, at least I know. But if it's all of a sudden, well, I got to go with my grandparents this weekend. Well, then you're not sitting there going like, oh, man, she thinks this, and this, and this.
Exactly.
Now that's hard for the other person. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and she's wonderful. And I'll tell her no, and she'll say why, and I'll say, well, here's why. And it's ironic how she won't put up a big argument. And sometimes she'll say, well, maybe I could do it later. Well, yeah, I think you could. Let's talk about it later, next time. That's the key. No is our guardrails.
Right.
And we can't have everything.
Right.
No is our guardrails. It's our guide. And here's what I will say. I say to a lot of people, your next yes comes from the last no.
Say that again. Your next yes comes from the last no. Wow.
And you are where you're at because of the last no you got.
Wow.
Because it makes a decision for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need a no. And we had talked a little bit. I mean, that's, people get upset and they feel like, God has told them no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did he? Because we're asking, we put it to prayer, we do all that stuff. Did he? Or is it you're not ready? That's a hard question to yourself.
It is.
We don't want to admit that sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes it is that you are just not ready, or maybe the climate, the circumstances around you isn't ready.
Yes. I mean, it actually could be a saving grace.
Yeah.
To the fact that you're going to avoid a bunch of embarrassment, do whatever, not be ready, have it fall through, do whatever it might be. But that's a time to ask questions. So when you hit a no, it's why did I get to no? And sometimes the people aren't going to give, but you got to sit back and evaluate it honestly. Why did I get that no? What are the perceptions? Do I think I've got that no? And again, that's learn, right? Listen, ethics, attitude, respect, and no, and they all intertwine. And again, no. So you get a no. How's your attitude when you get that no? You're going to walk around pouting in the whole thing.
Right.
Well, okay, I got to know. All right. Well, I'm going to concentrate. I'm going to think about this. I'm not going to let it own me right now. That's the other thing I see people happen is they get a no, and they think it changes their whole life. Well, no. Your next yes is coming. It truly is, and you're where you're at. It's you didn't get the job for a reason. Let's take a look at why you didn't get the job. And I know there's all kinds of people out there, this and that, and that very well could be true, but you've got to evaluate that.
What I love about this is that it really symbolizes the heart of the Father, our Heavenly Father, right? This concept that you have, this framework, this brilliant framework that you have that allows people to be able to evolve individually, but also allows teams and groups and organizations to be able to evolve as well. What I'm thinking about when you were talking about the no piece of the concept is how many people are living their lives frustrated, ineffective, hindered in a cycle, a toxic cycle of not growing because they fail to simply sit still, get still, and ask the questions of why.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It was even coming up for me, it was taught in certain climates, taught in certain circles and culture. You don't ask why.
Don't ask. Oh, by the way, if you ask why, the next thing is no too.
Exactly. The next thing is no. And to be honest with you, because we have to be honest, and some people who are listening in, you may be able to attest to this as well. But you get that no, and there's a why that follows, then there's repercussions.
Oh yeah, boy, you better start walking away now.
Right. But what you're saying here, and I'm speaking slowly because I want our viewers to really grasp what I'm grasping right now as I've been listening to you, Jim, talk. You are really showing us the heart of the Father in heaven, because what I believe so many people, especially leaders, which is why they lead the way that they lead and create toxic cultures the way that they do, is they've been taught and they've practiced not to examine, not to analyze, not to stop to say why, to get an understanding, so that they can learn in that moment and be able to evolve and grow. These are what you're saying. The no's are our guardrails, but also the no's are our keys.
Oh, absolutely. They're going to lead you to the next yes.
I love
You
that.
know, if you're sitting in a meeting, think about it. If you're the leader, if you're conducting a meeting, you're truly
Mhm.
the leader. And there's a lot of pushback and no's. You got two choices. You can get real angry and you can say, hey man, I'm the guy, I'm the boss, so this is the way we're going to do it.
Right.
Or you can go back in your office, you can reflect, and you can say, ask yourself, why am I getting all this pushback? Now,
Yes.
again, ultimately, you are the boss, and
Sure.
so did you not communicate the mission well? Is the vision not clear? Are we not on the? And here's where we go back to it. Okay, what part of the ethics and values are we off task? Is there
Right.
something not connecting, right? And where's the respect not happening? So
Mhm.
it creates a larger conversation, which a lot of people don't want to have. And the we got to stop. I shouldn't. I don't know how I was trying to think how to say this. We got to stop wanting to be led, and we got to start wanting to lead ourselves
Mm.
with our leaders.
Mhm.
And you know this very well. It takes accountability for that.
Right.
Because if I get a no, there's a reason. You know, there's one thing I was taught by my grandfather also, because every day I walked into his shop, he had two questions for me.
Mhm.
He'd say, why are you here? And what's going to be your legacy? Now,
Mm.
you think about this. When I first went into his shop on the very first Monday, he says, why are you here? I said, well, you and I talked about it. I'm here to help you. He said, no, that's not why you're here. And then when I was done that day, he looked at me and said, hey, whoa. What was your legacy today?
Yeah.
I said, well, what do you mean? Well, did you work well? Did you? Because you don't build a legacy at the end of your life. You build it every single day. You
Mhm.
know, and it was Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of what was it? Seven Habits of the whatever effective.
I got you. I got you.
You know what I'm talking about, right? But
Mhm.
one of his activities was write your obituary, right?
Mm.
Write down your
Okay. Yeah.
obituary. What is it you want in your obituary? Now live that life,
Go do that.
right? Live that life because that's your legacy.
Mhm.
If you sat down if anyone who's listening sat down right now and you write down all the things that you've done and realize that that's it, we're done. Because we don't know that number. We don't know that day.
Right.
That's your legacy. You got to build that every day. So if you're looking at that today and you're saying, this isn't what I like, well, then you need to take some serious internal checks and say, okay, what do I need to shift? What
Right.
do I need to learn right now to make sure that I'm getting the legacy I want? So, and this is, I mean, this is the honest day one. And I stepped into a classroom to teach. On my desk was a compass, by the
Mhm.
way. At the top of the compass, it says, why are you here? And at the bottom of the compass, it said, what will be your legacy? The day I walked out of education as a principal, that was on my desk. Because
Wow.
every morning when I sat down, it's why are you here? I need to know why I'm here. And I would say that to our teams when we got together in team meetings. I'd say to them, why are you here? And you see everybody walk. Now they figured it out after a while. No, you're not here because I called the meeting. Why are we here? And that establishes that. I would ask the kids that. Why are you here today in first period?
Right.
And the answer was, we're here to learn.
Yes.
See, we're going to listen. We're going to practice our ethics and values. We're going to have a positive attitude. We're going to respect each other. And if it no happens, we're going to move on. I mean, and you get those things established in a classroom, it's so easy to look at a kid if things are not going well, and you can just look at a kid and say, hey, what part of learn do we need to improve right now?
Mhm.
And when I became an assistant principal and put that in the handbook and stuff, kids would come down to the office and I'd walk by them and I'd say, hey, before you come in my office, make sure you're able to tell me what part of learn, what letter we've got to focus on,
Yeah.
and make them think about it.
Mhm.
Don't just come down and say, well, Mrs. So-and-so don't like me. No,
Yeah.
no, no,
Mhm.
no. That's not
That's not
work.
gonna cut it. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, maybe, it's funny. I used to tell kids, well, you just don't like me. Well, maybe I don't, maybe
Yeah.
you don't like me. I don't know. But yeah, you can tell. I mean, I think it's so simple, but yet it's so profound in the fact that it can lead your personal life. If you sit down every afternoon, every evening, and you say to yourself, okay, what did I hear today? What are the things that I pulled out of life today?
Right.
And how do I feel about them? That's journaling. And then, again, what was my attitude today? And it's funny, on my journal, I have a little smiley face, just is it a sad face, a smiley face, or just a straight face,
Right.
And did I get any no's? And then that's always the big one. If I got some no's, if something didn't go right, well, then why? And then what's my action?
Mm-hmm.
What's my action? I mean, am I just going to sit around and blame everybody? Well,
Yeah.
not every connection, and you know this, not everyone we reach out to is going to respond the way we want to. We go into it with a very
Absolutely.
positive attitude, but we got to accept that,
Absolutely.
and I look at it this way: your loss, right? Their loss.
Right.
I'm here to add value. You don't want my value? I'll give it to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, there's always somebody there ready and willing to receive it. Okay, Jim, last question here.
Uh-huh. Yep.
We're gonna land the plane on
Oh
this.
yeah.
Um, what what common leadership habit do you believe leaders need to begin to let go of in order to learn
Oh,
and evolve?
yeah, it's easy. Get over yourself.
Get over the pride, your ego.
Get over it. Get
Yes.
over it. Because ultimately, and I truly believe this is the problem we have,
Yeah.
in our whole global system. And I shouldn't, I don't, I'm not talking, I just think it's the whole thing we have. We've got
Yeah.
to get over, got to get over our self-importance,
Yeah.
because no matter how famous you are, after you're gone, you only get your 15, 20 minutes and no one cares.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to add value and lift people up. That's what leaders should do.
Right.
Servient leaders you should take pride in putting people in the right places to do the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And you should also command them to work themselves out of a job so you can replace them with someone else, but then you can give them something better to do.
I love that. Yes.
Every time I ever changed a position is because I worked myself out of that job, because there wasn't anywhere else I see I could go. And now it was time to move on. But I had to, I was working on that as I go. But yeah, we got to get back to servient leadership. And leaders work, it's not about us. It's about the organization. It's about building. So get over yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're important, just as important. But again, as a principal, if everyone wants me to make all the decisions, that's not good. I'll throw a plug out for a book that I read. It's called Turn This Ship Around. And if anyone's not read it, I would say go out and get it. I won't tell you any more about it, but it's exactly what it is. It's about a guy in the Navy who was given command
Mm-hmm.
of a submarine fleet in the Pacific, the worst. And he turned it around. But when you read through there and see all the things that were happening in there, it was ridiculous.
Right.
He became a servient leader. He let people lead themselves. And that's the real thing that I tried to get across to people with Learn, is it's a way to lead yourself.
Mm.
It's just a way to lead yourself. And it all starts with, let's face it, if we're not listening, what are we getting? And I'll share it with you after this, but I have this nice little matrix that you can look at, that if listening's missing, what you see in your team, that they're confused. If there's a bunch of, if we don't understand no, there's going to be a bunch of false starts.
Right.
So it's a way to identify what's happening in your team by, like if there's no values, well, then people are going to be very disconnected and frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of cool.
I could listen to Jim all day with this. I mean, I truly I truly believe that there's more to this. Okay, you do this, every day, all day, going into teams and working with them, working with leaders, helping them get past themselves. I love that, and to learn, to be able to evolve and grow and be effective. Um, how are we? I guess I'll ask this: what's next? What's next for Jim?
Well, what's next for me is I wrote the graphic novel, but I had on the shelf the adult version of how Learn came about, but how I used it in the classroom and how I used it in life and the whole thing. So that book is sitting there. So I'm actually working with someone to see if maybe it's possible to bring that book out. And
Okay.
I've also started working on a book called No, It's Not the End.
Yeah.
Because I think people need to realize that it's not the end. But for me, it's ultimately, I'm just trying to add value to people. I want to get into as many boardrooms and schools and help help people get where they we truly can. We can all learn and be effective,
Right.
but we have to get that common core going. So for me, it's just continue to spread the word of learn. And I think I'd mentioned to you, I've also started to look at learn itself and how it may lay itself into the Bible, and
Yeah.
what does that all mean? I ultimately, I think I shared the precursor to the title was,
Mhm.
God wants you to learn. And he
I
does.
love that.
He wants you to listen, ethics, attitude, I mean, hey, the 10 Commandments tell you right there about ethics.
Yeah, right.
Lock that
Right.
one down. He had 10,
Exactly.
and you can't whittle it down to 3. He had 10. So there it is.
Oh goodness. Oh, 10 rough ones. Whew.
Yeah,
Goodness.
well, and guess what? I used to tell kids it's real simple. When we had a handbook, I'd say, here's the rule book. Now, when you go play games at home with your kids, with your friends, you got a rule book. You follow the
Mhm.
rules. It's the same thing. Hey, you were given a rule book. Don't complain about stuff going the wrong way.
There you
But,
go.
but here's the great part about the rule book. There's things in there for you to get back on track with the rules.
Right. 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 You guys, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this, Jim. How can people stay connected with you? And how could they follow what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go out to my website, which is jimcarbaugh.com. I am on Twitter, at Jim Carbaugh. I also have my LinkedIn. Everyone keeps telling me I need to do Instagram.
Yes. Yes.
I got a Facebook from a long time ago, but I said, yeah. And then I got to be straight up. I mean, every time I get down and start looking at this Instagram, it's like somehow it just doesn't seem to click with me for right now. So I'm gonna. There's a young man at the gym where I go work out
Uh-huh.
that he was telling me that, and I said, well, then maybe you and I are going to have to sit down afterwards, someday after we work out, and you're just going to have to show me what buttons to push and how to do this stuff, because I'm not quite understanding the
The
everything
layout.
has
Yeah.
to be this and that. So yeah, but yeah, I'm on Twitter, and I just do a compass check on Twitter. I engage with some other leaders and so forth.
Sure.
I don't get into all the other stuff that's out there. It's just not my platform. It's just not for me. And again, Instagram, or not Instagram, but LinkedIn. But yeah,
Right.
jimcarbaugh.com. Check me out. Shoot me an email if there's something I can help you with. Um, I've got some things that go along with the Learn graphic novel. That you get the novel and take a picture of yourself with the novel, and I'll shoot you some masterminds or some activities and stuff you can do with the novel and with yourself, just to kind of pull that all in.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it, guys.
Yeah.
Y'all stay connected with Jim. As you can see, I told you he's very wise. He has some
Okay.
brilliance. And I love it. I love it. I love to be around other brilliant, wise people. I really do.
Well,
Because
I appreciate that
I
compliment.
yeah, for me, I love to learn. No pun
That's
intended.
great. Yeah. Yeah.
I
And,
really do. I really do. This is why I love doing the Global Leaders Roundtable, because I'm not just interviewing. I'm learning. I'm
oh yeah,
absorbing
I can imagine. Yeah, I've
as
seen.
well.
Yeah, yeah. You've had some wonderful guests and some really good conversations.
Yeah,
It's been good.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you. Those of you who have been listening in and watching, I thank you for watching and for participating over in the chat. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this ecosystem. Jim, again, thank you for pouring out such solid wisdom today. You have helped us see that leadership isn't just about strategy. It's all about systems and the right habits and the right mindset, bringing all of those things together to shape a culture that's worth, or not just worth, but to shape a culture that promotes and fosters learning and
Yeah.
evolving and growing. And so I thank you for that. For those of you who want to stay connected with Jim, that information is going to be down below this video. I want you to make sure that you stay connected with him. And hey, guys, if you also want to be a part of the Global Leaders Roundtable, you could do that. I am actually asking all of those who want to apply to be a part of the show and come speak with me, you could do that. Just go ahead and go to bit.ly/TGLR podcast. You could be on our list of applicants that we consider to come and be a part of the show. And then lastly, we've got, yes, none other than our Global Leaders Virtual Summit that's coming up on Global Kingdom Leadership, September 20th through the 21st. If you want to be a speaker, you can go and apply to be a speaker at bit.ly/TGLR Virtual Summit now. Or if you just want to register to come and hear great minds from all around the world, you can do that as well. Listen, for those of you who have been connected to this podcast, this movement, guys, I appreciate your viewership. Thank you for subscribing to the YouTube channel over there. Every subscription counts and it matters. And every viewership matters. Let's run these numbers up. Let's continue to spread the word that we are having these type of conversations, not just to pass time. As you can see by our conversation with Jim, these are wisdom conversations. These are keys and nuggets that you can implement, hopefully, in your everyday life and especially in your leadership journey. I'm Kenyon R. Dudley, and this has been the Global Leaders Roundtable podcast, Fireside Chat. And until next time, live well and live bold.